Kyle Morrison walked into the Great Hall of the Galactic Council for the last time. His steps echoed in the massive chamber where representatives from dozens of alien worlds sat in their floating seats. The blue-skinned Zephyrians whispered among themselves while the tall Alterans studied data screens with their large black eyes. The council had been humanity's home for 300 years, but today it felt cold and unwelcoming. Morrison reached the center platform and activated his translator device. Every species in the galaxy could understand his words now. He had practiced this speech many times, but his heart still beat fast as he began to speak. "Honored council members," he said, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "For 3 centuries, humanity has served this alliance with loyalty and dedication. Our ships have protected your worlds. Our soldiers have died for your people, and our engineers have built the defenses that keep this galaxy safe." The Zephyrian leader, Counselor Velthana, shifted in her seat. She knew what was coming. They all did. Morrison had requested this final audience after the Council's latest rejection of humanity's petition for membership. "We have asked for only one thing in return," Morrison continued. "A seat at this table. Not voting rights, not special privileges, just the chance to have our voice heard when decisions are made. Today marks the 15th time this council has denied our request. Admiral Zex Thara, the military commander whose fleet's humanity had saved countless times, looked uncomfortable. His 4 arms were crossed tightly across his chest. He had supported humanity's petition, but his vote was only one among many. Morrison pulled out a small device and placed it on the platform. It projected a holographic image of human ships scattered across the galaxy. Red dots showed human military bases, blue dots marked human colonies, and green lines traced the patrol routes that human fleets used to protect council space. "This is what humanity contributes to your alliance," Morrison said. 90% of your rapid response capability, 70% of your deep space patrol coverage, 60% of your technological innovation in military systems. We have given everything we have to protect your worlds and your people." The hall remained silent. The Karathi representative clicked his claws nervously. The hegemony delegates exchanged glances with their large compound eyes. They all knew these numbers were correct. Yet when we ask for representation, you tell us we are too young, too aggressive, too different. You say we need more time to prove ourselves worthy. How much more time do you need? How many more of our people must die defending your borders before you consider us equals? Morrison's voice grew stronger as he spoke. Behind him, the holographic display changed to show battle scenes from recent conflicts. Human ships fighting desperately against pirates near Alteran space. Human marines dying to defend Zephyrian colonies from raiders. Human engineers working around the clock to repair council defense platforms. We have served faithfully as your military arm for 300 years. We have never questioned your orders, never demanded special treatment, never used our strength to threaten or intimidate. We simply asked to be treated as partners rather than servants. The council members began to murmur among themselves. Some looked ashamed, others defensive. Counselor Mel Antha of the Zephyrians leaned forward in her seat. "Ambassador Morrison, perhaps we can discuss this further in committee?" "No," Morrison interrupted. His tone was polite, but firm. "The time for discussion has passed. We have given our blood, our ships, our lives for this alliance. We have asked for nothing but acknowledgement of our contributions. Since that is apparently too much to ask, we withdraw our petition." He paused, letting his words sink in. The hall was completely quiet now, and we withdraw ourselves. The statement hit the council like a physical blow. Several representatives stood up from their seats. Admiral Zexithara's 4 arms dropped to his sides in shock. "You cannot be serious," Counselor Varndak of the Hegemony said. The Alliance needs human military support. Your departure would leave us vulnerable to— That is no longer our concern, Morrison replied. You have made it clear that humanity is not welcome as an equal partner. Therefore, we are ending our partnership entirely. Morrison touched his communicator. Across the galaxy, human fleet commanders received their orders simultaneously. Every human ship, station, and outpost began immediate preparation for departure. The evacuation had been planned for months, waiting only for this moment. All human military forces are being recalled to human space, Morrison announced. All defense contracts with Council worlds are hereby terminated. All joint research projects are suspended. Humanity is leaving Council space entirely. The chaos that followed was immediate and loud. Council members shouted questions and demands. Some begged Morrison to reconsider. Others threatened economic sanctions. But Morrison simply collected his device and walked toward the exit. Captain Lisa Hayes received Morrison's signal aboard her flagship, the UES Defiant. She had been waiting in the outer system with the largest human evacuation fleet ever assembled. Her orders were clear and simple. All ships begin the exodus, she commanded. Maintain complete communication silence with all Council vessels. Set course for the Galactic Rim. Within 48 hours, every human presence in Council space was gone. They left behind empty bases, silent communication arrays, and defensive positions that had protected alien worlds for generations. The humans took their technology, their knowledge, and their courage with them. As the last human ship crossed into the dark space between galaxies, Morrison sent one final message to the Council. It contained only 7 words that would haunt the galaxy for years to come. You had your chance to choose wisely. 6 months had passed since the humans left, and Admiral Zexathara stared at the reports on his desk with growing horror. The numbers told a story he did not want to believe. 3 Alteran colonies had fallen to pirate raids. The Meridian sector was in chaos as local warlords fought for control. 17 merchant convoys had disappeared in the past month alone. The Admiral's forearms moved quickly across his control panels as he tried to coordinate the Council's remaining military forces. But everywhere he looked, there were gaps that human ships used to fill. The Zephyrian fleet was designed for defense, not rapid response. The Alteran vessels were built for escort duty, not major combat. The hegemony had powerful ships, but they were slow and clumsy compared to human designs. "Status report," Zexathara commanded as his aide entered the command center. "The situation in the Outer Rim continues to deteriorate," the young officer replied. "The Crimson Tide Raiders have taken control of the Nexus Gate in Sector 7. Our nearest response fleet is still 4 days away." 4 days. Before the humans left, there would have been a rapid response squadron there within 6 hours. Human ships could jump faster, fight harder, and adapt quicker than anything else in the galaxy. Now those ships were gone, and the Council was learning just how much they had depended on human military might. On the frontier world of New Carthage, Governor Pete Walsh watched smoke rise from the burning settlements through his office window. The raiders had come in the night, striking fast and hard before disappearing back into the asteroid fields. The local defense force had crumbled within hours. Walsh had sent 17 emergency broadcasts to the Council, but the response was always the same. Help was coming, but it would take weeks to arrive. By then, there would be nothing left to save. "Sir, we have another incoming transmission," his aide reported. "From the Council?" Walsh asked hopefully. "No, sir. From the raiders. They are demanding tribute payments for protection." Walsh closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. Protection money. They had fallen so far that pirates were now demanding tribute from Council worlds. This would never have happened when the humans were here. Human patrol ships would have hunted down these raiders and destroyed them before they could threaten a single settlement. In the Council chambers, emergency sessions ran day and night. Counselor Mel Antha of the Zephyrian Republic found herself thinking constantly about her former human colleagues. She remembered Commander Frank Murphy, who had served as military liaison for over 50 years. He had been quiet and professional, but his tactical insights had saved countless lives. The humans brought more than just ships, she told the assembled council. They brought a different way of thinking about warfare. They were flexible where we are rigid, creative where we are traditional. Counselor Varndak of the Hegemony clicked his claws impatiently. We can hire mercenaries to replace their military function. The Karathi have offered to expand their fleet operations for a substantial fee. Mercenaries are not the same as allies, Melantha replied. The humans fought for us because they believed in our cause. Mercenaries fight for money. When the credits run out, so does their loyalty. The debate continued for hours, but no real solutions emerged. Every proposal ran into the same problem. The council had grown comfortable depending on human protection. They had specialized their own forces for specific roles, leaving the general military duties to humanity. Now that humanity was gone, there was no one left who could fill that role. Admiral Zexathara received a priority transmission from the Altaran homeworld. Prime Minister Keithron appeared on the communication screen, his normally calm demeanor replaced by obvious panic. Admiral, we need immediate military assistance. A massive pirate fleet is moving toward our core systems. Our merchant marine reports at least 300 vessels. 300? Zexathara's voice betrayed his shock. How did they assemble such a large force without detection? They used to avoid our space because of human patrols, Kethran explained. Without that threat, they have grown bold. Our intelligence suggests multiple raider groups have joined together under a single commander. Zexathara checked his tactical displays. The Council's available forces were scattered across dozens of systems, trying to cover the gaps left by human departure. He could assemble perhaps 50 ships to respond to this threat, but it would take weeks to gather them. I can offer you a squadron of hegemony cruisers within 10 days, he said finally. 10 days? Kethran's large eyes widened in disbelief. Admiral, they will reach our outer colonies in 3 days. By the time your ships arrive, millions of my people could be dead or enslaved. The transmission ended with Kethran's desperate plea echoing in the command center. Zexathara stared at the star map, feeling helpless for the first time in his long military career. Red markers showed dozens of crisis points across Council space. Each one required immediate attention, but he simply did not have enough ships to respond. Dr. Susan Blake watched the reports from her laboratory aboard the human colony ship Horizon's Edge. She had spent years working with the Council's Strategic Planning Division, trying to convince them that military diversity was crucial for galactic stability. The alien leaders had listened politely, but never truly understood her warnings. They are fighting the last war, she told Captain Richard Stone as they reviewed the intelligence data that human scouts still gathered from the edge of Council space. Every race thinks in patterns established millions of years ago. The Zephyrians always seek diplomatic solutions. The Altarans rely on economic pressure. The hegemony uses overwhelming force. But warfare evolves, Stone replied, understanding her point immediately. Exactly. The pirates and raiders have learned to exploit these predictable patterns. They know the Zephyrians will try to negotiate first, giving them time to escape. They know the Altarans will threaten economic sanctions that take months to implement. They know the hegemony forces are too slow to catch them. Blake pulled up a tactical analysis on her screen. It showed pirate attack patterns over the past 6 months. The raiders were growing bolder and more sophisticated with each assault. Humans succeeded because we were comfortable with uncertainty and change, she continued. We adapted our tactics based on what each situation required. Every other species had their traditional methods and stuck to them, regardless of circumstances. The human fleet continued its journey toward the galactic rim, but they monitored Council space carefully. Captain Lisa Hayes read the reports with mixed emotions. Part of her felt vindicated that the Council was finally learning the value of human contributions. But another part felt sadness for the innocent beings who were suffering because of political pride. "Captain, we are receiving increased communication attempts from Council forces," her communications officer reported. "Continue to maintain silence," Hayes ordered. "We made our position clear when we left." But privately, she wondered how long humanity could maintain this isolation while watching their former allies struggle against threats that human forces could easily handle. The question was not whether the Council would eventually ask for help, but whether humanity would be willing to answer when they did. The first cracks in the Galactic Alliance were spreading, and everyone could see that something fundamental had broken when the humans departed without a word. 1 year after the humans departed, the galaxy was falling apart. Admiral Zexathara stood in his command center watching red warning lights flash across every sector map. The Crimson Tide Raiders had conquered an entire spiral arm and declared themselves an independent empire. The ancient Void Swarm had returned from the dark spaces beyond the galaxy, sensing weakness like predators smelling blood. Worst of all, 2 Council member races had declared war on each other. The Karathi Empire and the Stellar Federation were fighting a bitter conflict that had started with trade disputes but quickly escalated into open warfare. Each side blamed the other for the current crisis. The Karathi claimed the Federation had hired human mercenaries before the Exodus, weakening Council unity. The Federation accused the Karathi of secretly supporting the Raiders to eliminate competition for their military contracts. "Sir, we have another report from the front lines," his aide announced nervously. Zexathara accepted the datapad with one of his 4 hands while using the others to manage tactical displays. The news was consistently bad. A Federation colony ship carrying 50,000 civilians had been destroyed by Karathi forces. In response, Federation warships had bombarded a Karathi mining station, killing thousands of workers. The Council had been designed to prevent exactly this kind of conflict, but without human peacekeeping forces to maintain stability, old rivalries were resurging with deadly consequences. Human ships had often served as neutral mediators when tensions rose between member species. Their absence left a vacuum that no other race seemed able to fill. Dr. Susan Blake studied the tactical data from her research station aboard the Horizon's Edge. The patterns were clear to anyone who understood military history. Every council race was reverting to their traditional methods of warfare, making them predictable and vulnerable. "They are repeating the same mistakes over and over," she told Captain Richard Stone as they analyzed the latest battle reports. "The Zephyrians still believe every conflict can be resolved through negotiation. The Alterans think economic pressure will force their enemies to surrender. The hegemony uses massive direct assaults that waste enormous resources." Stone nodded grimly. Meanwhile, the Raiders and the Swarm adapt to each predictable pattern. Blake highlighted several tactical examples on her screen. In every case, Council forces had been outmaneuvered by enemies who understood their limitations. The Crimson Tide used hit-and-run tactics that exploited the slow response times of hegemony fleets. The Void Swarm overwhelmed Zephyrian diplomatic attempts with pure biological aggression that could not be reasoned with. "Humans brought flexibility to the Alliance," Blake continued. "We could fight like raiders when speed was needed, like engineers when technology was the solution, or like diplomats when negotiation might work. We were the galaxy's generalists in a universe of specialists." The communication array crackled with an incoming transmission. Captain Stone activated the receiver to find Admiral Zexathara's image appearing on their screen. The alien commander looked exhausted, his normally perfect uniform wrinkled and stained. "Dr. Blake," Captain Stone, "I know you can hear this transmission even if you cannot respond," Zexathara began. "The situation has become critical. The Void Swarm has broken through our containment lines in Sector 12. They are advancing toward the core worlds at an unprecedented rate." Blake and Stone exchanged glances. They had been monitoring swarm activity through long-range sensors. The creatures were moving faster and more aggressively than in previous incursions. Our tactical computers cannot predict their behavior patterns, Zexathera continued. They seem to be using strategies we have never encountered before. We believe they have learned from observing our standard response protocols. That was exactly what Blake had feared. The swarm was a collective intelligence that could analyze and adapt to enemy tactics. When human forces had fought them before, human unpredictability had been their greatest weapon. Council forces, with their rigid traditional approaches, were giving the swarm exactly the kind of predictable data it needed to develop countermeasures. On the frontier world of Kepler-7, Governor Lucy Martinez watched through her office window as panic spread through the streets. News of the swarm advance had reached the civilian population, and people were fleeing toward the spaceports in desperate attempts to escape. The local defense force had already evacuated, leaving the world defensively. Martinez had served as a human colonial administrator for 20 years before the Exodus. She had stayed behind when most humans left, hoping to help maintain stability in the transition period. Now she regretted that decision as she watched alien families struggle to find transport off the doomed world. Her communication console chimed with an incoming message from the Council Emergency Command. The automated voice was calm but urgent. All remaining civilians in Sector 12 are advised to evacuate immediately. Council forces are implementing a strategic withdrawal to defensive positions in Sector 11. Estimated swarm arrival time is 48 hours. 48 hours. Martinez knew there was not enough transport capacity to evacuate even half the population in that time. Under human protection, this world had grown prosperous and safe. Now it was being abandoned to save resources for more important systems. She opened a secure channel to the human fleet, knowing it would probably be ignored. This is Governor Martinez on Kepler-7, requesting emergency evacuation assistance for civilian population. We have over 2 million beings who cannot escape in time. The response came faster than she had expected. Captain Lisa Hayes appeared on her screen, her expression serious but determined. Governor, we are monitoring the situation. How many transport ships do you need? At least 50 heavy haulers, Martinez replied quickly. But, Captain, this will expose human ships to swarm attack. The Council might consider it an act of war. Hayes smiled grimly. Let them try to complain. We are not going to let innocent people die because of political games. Within 12 hours, human evacuation ships began arriving at Kepler-7. They moved with the efficiency and speed that had made human military forces legendary throughout the galaxy. Transport after transport lifted off carrying mixed groups of alien refugees, while human escort fighters provided protection against swarm scouts. The evacuation was completed just 6 hours before the first swarm bioships reached the system. As the last transport cleared the planet's atmosphere, human sensors detected massive biological signatures emerging from hyperspace. The swarm had arrived in force, with thousands of living ships that could grow and reproduce as they consumed. Planetary resources. Admiral Zexathara received reports of the successful evacuation with mixed emotions. He was grateful that the humans had saved so many lives, but their intervention highlighted how completely the Council had failed to protect its own people. The contrast was painful and obvious. Sir, we are receiving a priority transmission from the human fleet, his communications officer reported. The message was brief and formal. Council forces, this is Admiral Turner of the human fleet. We rescued the civilians you abandoned on Kepler-7. The swarm is advancing faster than your projections indicate. Your current defensive positions will not hold. Zexathera stared at the tactical display showing swarm movements. Turner was right. The creatures were moving in coordinated waves that would overwhelm the scattered Council defenses within days. They needed a new strategy, but every traditional approach had already failed. For the first time since the humans departed, Zexathera began to seriously consider the unthinkable option of asking for their help. But he knew the price would be high, and the Council's pride might not survive paying it. The Council's desperate attempts to replace human military capability were failing in every possible way. Admiral Zexathera reviewed the latest disaster reports with growing despair. The mercenary fleet they had hired from the Outer Rim had turned to piracy after just 3 months, using their insider knowledge of Council defenses to raid the very worlds they were supposed to protect. The crash military training program for peaceful species had produced soldiers who broke down in combat or refused orders when facing real danger. "Sir, the Zephyrian Rapid Response Squadron has requested permission to withdraw from the Nexus system," his aide reported with obvious embarrassment. "Withdraw?" Zexthara's 4 arms gestured in frustration. "They have been in position for only 6 hours. What is their reasoning?" "Their commander reports that aggressive combat actions conflict with their cultural values. They request reassignment to diplomatic missions only." Zexathara wanted to throw something across the room, but that would not solve anything. The Zephyrians were naturally peaceful beings who had evolved on a world without predators. Asking them to fight like humans was like asking fish to fly. Every species in the Council had their strengths, but none of them could match human adaptability in warfare. The situation was growing worse each day. Karathi and Federation fleets continued their destructive war, while the Void Swarm consumed entire systems on the Galactic Rim. The Crimson Tide Raiders had grown so bold they were now demanding tribute from Council worlds in broad daylight. Dozens of member systems were considering withdrawal from the Alliance to seek protection elsewhere. Admiral Grace Turner received the first official communication from the Council in over 2 years while reviewing tactical data aboard her flagship, the UES Sovereign. The message came through encrypted channels directly from Admiral Zexathera himself, transmitted to the last known human outpost coordinates. "Admiral Turner, this is Admiral Zexathera of the Council Defense Force. I am transmitting this message with the authorization of the Emergency Council Committee. The situation has become critical beyond our ability to manage. The Void Swarm has broken through our containment lines and is advancing toward the core worlds. Conservative estimates suggest they will reach the Council homeworld within 6 months. Turner paused the message and called for her senior staff. Captain Richard Stone, Dr. Susan Blake, and a dozen other experienced officers gathered in the conference room aboard the massive colony ship New Earth. They had all known this moment would eventually come. "Continue the message," Turner ordered. Zexathera's image reappeared on the screen. His normally composed demeanor showed cracks of desperation and exhaustion. "We have attempted to fill the military gap left by your departure, but our efforts have been unsuccessful. Mercenary forces proved unreliable. Our member species lack the tactical flexibility needed for modern warfare. Our casualties are mounting, while our effectiveness continues to decline." The alien admiral paused, clearly struggling with what he had to say next. "Admiral Turner, the Council is prepared to discuss terms for human military assistance. We understand that the previous arrangement was unsatisfactory to your people. We are willing to negotiate new terms that address your concerns about representation and equality." The message ended with coordinates for a neutral meeting point in deep space. Turner looked around the room at her colleagues. The debate that followed was intense and sometimes angry. Senator Jake Collins, who had joined the colonial fleet as a civilian representative, was the first to speak. "They had 3 centuries to treat us as equals, 300 years of human blood spilled for their protection, and they never once considered giving us a voice in the decisions that sent our people to die. Now they come crawling back when they need us to save them again." Dr. Blake nodded in agreement. "The pattern is clear. Every time there is a crisis, they remember how useful humans can be. As soon as the danger passes, we go back to being useful servants who should be grateful for their tolerance." But Captain Stone raised a different concern. "What about the innocent civilians? The Zephyrian children who will be consumed by the swarm? The Altaran families being enslaved by raiders? They never voted to exclude us from the Council." "Admiral." Turner had been listening carefully to all perspectives. As the senior military officer, the final decision would ultimately be hers, but she wanted to understand every angle before making such a momentous choice. "The question is not whether the council leadership deserves our help," she said finally. "The question is whether we can live with ourselves if we let billions of innocent beings die because of political grievances." The debate continued for hours. Some argued for complete isolation, pointing out that humanity was thriving in their new colonies beyond the galactic rim. Others called for conditional assistance with strict terms that would force the council to change their policies. A few suggested that humanity should take advantage of council weakness to establish their own independent empire. Captain Lucy Parker, who commanded the escort squadron that had helped evacuate Kepler-7, spoke for many of the younger officers. "We did not leave because we wanted to abandon our duty to protect innocent lives. We left because we were tired of being treated as second-class citizens. If we can help on our own terms, as equals rather than servants, then we should help." Turner called for a formal vote by the Human Colonial Congress. The debate moved to the main assembly aboard New Earth, where representatives from every human colony and ship could participate. The discussion was broadcast to human settlements throughout their new territory, allowing every citizen to hear the arguments and voice their opinions. The vote was closer than many had expected. 43% favored continued isolation. 37% supported conditional assistance. 20% wanted to offer unconditional help regardless of political considerations, but the majority was clear enough to provide direction. The Human Colonial Congress authorizes limited military assistance to the Galactic Council, Turner announced. "But we will negotiate as independent allies, not as returning subjects. We will coordinate with council forces but maintain our own command structure, and we will expect concrete commitments regarding future political representation." Turner recorded her response to Admiral Zexathara. "Admiral, humanity is willing to provide military assistance against the current threats. However, we will participate as equal allies, not as subordinate forces. We propose a meeting between senior commanders to discuss operational coordination and political arrangements." She paused before adding the most important part. "Admiral, this crisis will end eventually. When it does, humanity expects full council, membership including voting rights. We will not again accept a position as military servants without political representation." The message was transmitted toward council space using human long-range communication arrays. Now they would wait to see if the council was desperate enough to accept equality as the price for human help. Admiral Zexathara received the response, while coordinating the defense of the Altaran homeworld against a massive swarm advance. Despite the desperate situation, he felt a moment of relief. The humans were willing to help, even if their terms would cause political upheaval in the council chambers. He immediately forwarded the message to the emergency committee with his own recommendation. "The human terms are acceptable given our current crisis. I strongly advise acceptance." Within hours, the council voted to authorize negotiations. For the first time in galactic history, they would treat another species as equal partners rather than junior members. The question now was whether this change would come too late to save the galaxy from complete collapse. The human fleet that returned to council space was smaller, but far more advanced than what had departed 2 years earlier. Admiral Turner's flagship, the UES Sovereign, led a task force of only 50 vessels, but each ship represented the peak of human military evolution. During their exile, human engineers had pushed their technology to unprecedented levels, driven by the need for complete self-sufficiency in hostile territory. The ships that now approached the rendezvous point near the Centauri Gate incorporated quantum computing arrays that could adapt their own programming in real time. Their armor systems could reconfigure molecular structure to resist different types of weapons. Most impressive of all, their weapon systems could analyze enemy defenses and modify their own output to exploit weaknesses within seconds of engagement. Captain, Troy Martinez commanded the escort squadron from his cruiser, the UES Relentless. He had spent the past 2 years training with these new systems, learning to fight in ways that would have been impossible with older human technology. His crew could now coordinate with their ship's artificial intelligence to execute complex, tactical maneuvers that required split-second timing and perfect precision. "Admiral, Council forces are approaching our position," his sensor officer reported. Composition appears to be one hegemony dreadnought, 3 Zephyrian cruisers, and a mixed squadron of smaller vessels. Turner studied the tactical display with interest. The Council formation was defensive and cautious, which suggested they were still not sure how humans would react to this meeting. She had chosen to bring only a small force to avoid appearing threatening, but every ship in her fleet could probably handle the entire Council squadron if negotiations went badly. "Open a communication channel to the Council flagship," she ordered. The main screen showed Admiral Zexathara standing on the bridge of his dreadnought, Eternal Vigilance. The alien commander looked older and more tired than Turner remembered, with new stress lines around his large eyes. 2 years of military disasters had clearly taken their toll on him. "Admiral Turner, welcome back to Council space," Zexathara said formally. "I want to express the Council's gratitude for your willingness to assist in this crisis." "Our assistance comes with conditions," Turner replied without any diplomatic softening. "Humanity will fight alongside Council forces as independent allies, not as returning subordinates. We coordinate with your forces but answer to our own command structure, and when this crisis ends, humanity expects full Council membership, including voting rights." The negotiation that followed was tense and sometimes heated. Councillor Varndak, participating by holographic link from the Council homeworld, objected to several human demands. "You ask for immediate full membership without the traditional probationary period. This violates centuries of established protocol. Your protocols assumed that applicant species would need time to prove their value to the Alliance," Turner responded sharply. "Humanity has already proven our value over 3 centuries of service. We are not applying as supplicants seeking membership. We are offering alliance between equals." Dr. Susan Blake, now serving as the Human Diplomatic Advisor, provided supporting arguments. "The current crisis demonstrates that the Council needs diversity of thought and approach. Every member species brings their own perspective and capabilities. Humanity's contribution extends beyond military force to include adaptability, innovation, and tactical flexibility." The discussions continued for hours, but the Council's desperate situation ultimately forced acceptance of human terms. With Void Swarm forces advancing toward core systems and the Crimson Tide preparing a major offensive, they simply could not afford to reject the only military force capable of effective resistance. "The Council accepts the proposed alliance terms," Zexathara announced finally. "Human forces will be treated as independent allies with full operational autonomy. In exchange, humanity will provide military assistance against current threats to galactic stability." The formal agreement was signed aboard the UES Sovereign, with representatives from both sides witnessing the historic document. For the first time in Council history, another species would fight as equal partners rather than junior members seeking approval. As the combined fleet moved toward the crisis zones, even veteran alien commanders found themselves impressed by human tactical innovation. The first joint operation targeted a Void Swarm tendril that had penetrated deep into Alteran space. Council forces had been unable to dislodge the creatures using conventional tactics. Captain Martinez led a squadron of human corvettes in a daring attack that confused and disrupted the swarm's collective consciousness. Instead of engaging the bioships directly, the human vessels used precisely coordinated gravity weapons to collapse the spatial anomalies that the swarm used for faster-than-light travel. "Remarkable," Admiral Zexathara commented as he watched the tactical display. "Our forces have been trying to destroy individual swarm vessels. The humans are attacking their logistical infrastructure. The strategy worked perfectly. Cut off from reinforcement and resupply, the isolated swarm forces became vulnerable to conventional attacks. Council forces that had been retreating for months suddenly found themselves able to advance and reclaim lost territory. But the most impressive demonstration came during the Battle of Meridian Station. A massive Crimson Tide fleet had surrounded the important trading post, demanding surrender and tribute. Council forces had been preparing for a costly frontal assault when human ships arrived with a completely different approach. Captain Lucy Parker commanded the human destroyer squadron that infiltrated the raider formation using advanced stealth systems. Instead of attacking the pirate ships directly, her forces targeted their command and communication networks with precision electromagnetic pulses that shut down their coordination systems. The raiders are trying to re-establish communications, Parker reported to Admiral Turner. But their leadership structure is breaking down. Individual ship commanders are starting to act independently. Within hours, the unified raider fleet had dissolved into dozens of smaller groups acting without coordination. Some tried to fight, others attempted to flee, and a few actually began attacking each other in the confusion. Council forces easily defeated the scattered remnants of what had been an unstoppable armada just days before. Admiral Zexathara found himself reconsidering everything he thought he knew about warfare. Human tactics were not just different from traditional council approaches. They were revolutionary. Where alien commanders focused on destroying enemy forces, humans targeted enemy capabilities. Where council forces relied on overwhelming firepower, humans used precision and timing to achieve maximum effect with minimum resources. Admiral Turner, I must admit that human tactical methods are far more sophisticated than I realized, he told her during a joint planning session. Our military doctrine has remained essentially unchanged for millennia. You have shown us that warfare itself has evolved beyond our understanding. Turner accepted the compliment graciously, but her expression remained serious. Admiral, this cooperation works because we are treated as equals. Both sides contribute their strengths and compensate for each other's weaknesses. If the Council tries to return to the old arrangement after this crisis, humanity will again withdraw. The warning was clear and unmistakable. The galaxy had gotten a second chance to build a truly cooperative alliance, but human patience was not unlimited. The Council would need to prove that their acceptance of equality was genuine and permanent, not just a temporary expedient born of desperation. As reports of human military successes spread throughout Council space, public opinion began to shift dramatically. Beings who had once viewed humans as useful but inferior servants now saw them as saviors and protectors. The political pressure for full human membership was becoming irresistible, but the greatest test was still to come. The main Void Swarm fleet was approaching the galactic core, and no force in Council history had ever successfully defeated a full swarm invasion. Humanity's new alliance with the Council would either save the galaxy or die trying. The final battle against the Void Swarm began in the Nexus system, where ancient jump gates connected 7 spiral arms of the galaxy. If the Swarm seized control of this critical location, they could spread across the entire galaxy within months, consuming every world and every civilization in their path. Admiral Turner stood on the bridge of the UES Sovereign, coordinating the largest combined fleet ever assembled in galactic history. The enemy force was unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. Millions of bioships emerged from dark space, their living hulls pulsing with alien energy. Some were massive dreadnoughts the size of small moons, while others were swift attack forms that moved like schools of predatory fish. At the center of the formation was the Swarm Queen, a creature so large it generated its own gravitational field. "All ships, this is Admiral Turner," she broadcast to the combined fleet. "Today we fight not as separate species, but as one galaxy, united against extinction. Human vessels will coordinate breakthrough attacks while Council forces provide covering fire and defensive screens." Admiral Zexathara commanded the Council forces from his flagship, working in perfect coordination. With Turner for the first time in his career, The alien admiral had learned to trust human tactical instincts, while Turner respected the defensive capabilities that Council species had perfected over millions of years of evolution. The battle began with a massive swarm assault that tested every defensive system in the Allied fleet. Bioships swarmed around Council vessels like antibodies attacking an infection, while the larger swarm forms targeted human ships with weapons that adapted their properties in real time. Captain Troy. Martinez led the first human breakthrough attempt, taking his cruiser squadron directly into the heart of the swarm formation. The bioships immediately began analyzing human weapon signatures and developing countermeasures, but Martinez had anticipated this response. "All ships, switch to kinetic bombardment," he ordered, as swarm creatures began absorbing their energy. Weapons. "Target their neural clusters with solid projectiles." The human ships immediately reconfigured their weapon systems, demonstrating the adaptability that had made them legendary throughout the galaxy. Within minutes, they were firing accelerated metal slugs that punched through bio-armor that had just adapted to resist energy attacks. But the swarm adapted again, growing thicker armor plating that could stop kinetic weapons. Captain Lucy Parker, commanding the destroyer squadron, had the next innovation ready. "Martinez, cover us," she transmitted. "We are switching to quantum disruptors." Parker's ships began firing weapons that attacked matter at the subatomic level, unraveling the molecular bonds that held swarm bioships together. The creatures had no defense against this approach, because their adaptive systems could not comprehend attacks that operated below the level of atomic structure. The tide of battle began to turn as human innovation overcame swarm adaptation. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Susan Blake, monitoring the battle from her research ship, made a crucial discovery. "Admiral Turner, I am detecting harmonic frequencies in the swarm communication patterns," Blake reported. "They're collective. Consciousness operates on specific neural wavelengths. If we can disrupt those frequencies, we might be able to break their coordination." Turner immediately grasped the implications. "Can you generate a counter-frequency?" "Already working on it," Blake replied. "But I need all human ships to broadcast the signal simultaneously for maximum effect." Within an hour, every human vessel in the fleet had been equipped with Blake's neural disruption transmitters. The signal they broadcast was precisely calibrated to interfere with swarm collective consciousness, turning their greatest strength into a fatal weakness. The effect was immediate and devastating. Swarm ships that had moved with perfect coordination suddenly began attacking each other. Bioforms that had operated as a unified organism broke apart into confused individual creatures. The massive swarm queen let out a psychic scream that was felt across half the galaxy as her connection to her children was severed. Admiral Zexathara watched in amazement as the unstoppable swarm force crumbled into chaos. "Incredible," he said, to his tactical officer. "In one stroke, the humans have accomplished what our military theorists said was impossible." The cleanup operation took several more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Isolated swarm creatures were easily defeated by conventional weapons once they lost their collective intelligence. As the last bioship was destroyed, cheers echoed across the communication channels of every ship in the Allied fleet. But Admiral Turner's thoughts were already turning to the aftermath. The victory had been achieved through cooperation between equals, not through human superiority over Council forces. Both sides had contributed essential capabilities that neither could have provided alone. 1 month later, the formal ceremony took place in the rebuilt council chambers on the Alliance homeworld. For the first time in galactic history, a new species was granted immediate full membership with complete voting rights. Admiral Turner took her place as humanity's first High Counselor, while Captain Parker was promoted to Admiral and given command of the new Integrated Defense Force. In her inaugural address, Turner's words were simple but profound. The strength of any alliance lies not in the power of its strongest member, but in its willingness to hear the voice of its smallest. Humanity learned this lesson during our exile. we discovered that our greatest strength came not from our weapons or our ships, but from our ability to adapt and innovate when faced with new challenges. She paused, looking around the chamber at representatives from dozens of species who had once considered humans unworthy of respect. Now we offer to teach this lesson to the galaxy. True strength comes from diversity of thought, from the willingness to try new approaches when old methods fail, and from the courage to treat others as equals even when they are different from ourselves. Counselor Mel Antha of the Zephyrian Republic was the first to stand and applaud. Soon, the entire chamber was on its feet, acknowledging not just humanity's military contributions, but their fundamental role in saving galactic civilization. Admiral Parker stood among the human delegation, thinking of all the colleagues who had died believing they would never be accepted as equals. Their sacrifice had not been in vain. The galaxy had learned that cooperation between equals was always stronger than domination by superiors. Dr. Blake, now appointed as the Council's first director of adaptive strategy, began implementing new military doctrines that emphasized flexibility and innovation over traditional rigid approaches. Her first directive was to create integrated training programs where different species could learn from each other's tactical methods. The ceremony concluded with the signing of the new Galactic Charter, a document that enshrined the principle of equality among all member species. No longer would any race be treated as junior partners or military servants. The alliance would be exactly that, an alliance of equals working together for mutual benefit and protection. As the human delegation prepared to return to their new worlds beyond the galactic rim, Turner received a private message from Admiral Zexthara. "Admiral, I want you to know that this old soldier has learned something important. Military strength without moral courage is worthless. Humanity showed us both qualities, and the galaxy is better for it." Turner smiled as she composed her reply. "Admiral, we all make mistakes. The measure of wisdom is not avoiding them, but learning from them. The Council has shown that wisdom today." The humans had departed without a word when they were denied equality, but they had returned with a voice that would never again be silenced. In recognizing their error and accepting the price of their pride, the Council had gained something far more valuable than military protection. They had gained the knowledge that true strength came from unity in diversity, and that the galaxy's future lay not in domination by any single species, but in cooperation among equals. The great experiment in galactic democracy had finally begun, founded on the principle that every voice deserved to be heard and every contribution deserved to be respected. Humanity had taught the galaxy its greatest lesson, that the price of pride was too high to pay, but the reward of humility was beyond measure.